Pastor Doug here from Crossroads. It's great to be with you. I hope that today's message will draw you closer to Jesus.
How many of you have ever gotten a bad first impression of someone? You got a bad first impression. Maybe you had an encounter with them that didn't go particularly well. Maybe it was a weird online exchange. Maybe you left feeling that they were arrogant, or they were mean, or they were unhelpful. Maybe it was just a case of you getting an impression based on, how they look, or their social status, or any other number of things. But for whatever reason, you got this impression of them in your mind. And then when you got to know them, it ended up being a different story. Have you ever had this happen? You get this terrible first impression of someone, you get to meet them, you get to interact with them, you start getting to know them as a person, you're like, you know what? That wasn't accurate. That really wasn't right, was it? You ever had that? Or even more interesting sometimes is when someone comes up to you and confesses their bad first impression of you. That's always a weird experience. Someone comes to me, man, I used to think you were super arrogant, and now I don't anymore. I don't know how to take that. I'm like, thanks, I guess. I'm glad you don't think that, but I'm kind of not happy that you did that in the beginning. But it happens to us. It happens. We get bad first impressions. We get inaccurate first impressions of people. And sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience, you're thinking, man, if I had just not had that bad impression, man, maybe we would have been so much less awkward at work. Man, maybe that friendship could have taken off so much sooner had I not had that. But it's a human experience. We do this. It happens. But I think it also happens to us when it comes to Jesus and when it comes to God in general. Sometimes we get bad impressions of God. We get bad impressions of Jesus. Now, sometimes they come from where we just had like a childlike understanding of who God was or what God was, and it never got updated as we got older. Or maybe you had a bad encounter with someone who said they followed Jesus, and it left you with a terrible impression of Jesus or a terrible impression of God. What if the impression we have about Jesus isn't the most accurate? So we are in week 2 of our series, Jesus Is, a series where we are looking at who is Jesus? What is he all about? How can we correct those ideas? So let's play a little bit of word association. If I say the word God, what descriptive word comes to your mind when I say the word God? Think about it. What descriptive words come to your mind? Maybe the word powerful comes to your mind when we think about God. Maybe it's creator. Maybe that's what you think. Maybe you like to throw out a theological term like omniscient when it comes to what we think about God. Or maybe for you, it's the word harsh or the word judgmental. What about Jesus? Maybe we have some different words we associate with Jesus. What about Jesus? What words come to mind? Maybe wise, maybe loving, maybe kind. Maybe the word teacher comes to mind. Now, we could keep playing this game for a long time. I could keep having you generate a list upon list upon list of words to describe Jesus. I bet you we will be at this for a long time before you come up with the word that we're going to talk about with Jesus today. The word is gentle. Jesus is gentle. Now, this is what we think about when we think about gentle. Fabric softener is gentle. Baby shampoo is gentle. And we really kind of hope that our laxative happens to be gentle. Okay? That's what we tend to think about when we think about gentle. But is Jesus gentle? Is that word associated with Jesus? Now, For some of you, thinking about Jesus as gentle might not be that huge of a stretch for you. But for others of you, the idea of Jesus being gentle just doesn't compute. Maybe you have a very different impression of him, of Jesus, of God. Maybe that impression of him that you have has caused you to spend part or all of your life running from him, or avoiding him, or ignoring him. Is it possible that the impression you have of Jesus might not be accurate? Is it possible that the God of the universe is, of all things, gentle? So how do we find out? How do we find out if Jesus is gentle? I think the best way for us to find out about this is to look and examine at how Jesus interacted with people when he was here on earth. So we're going to look at a story. We're going to look at a very specific story of how Jesus treated somebody who he did not have to treat gently. Someone who, in fact, the religious leaders believed deserved the exact opposite of gentle. So we're going to be in John chapter 8 this morning, starting in verse 2. So let's look at this story. At dawn, he, meaning Jesus, appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. So what you have here, first thing in the morning, right at the very beginning, at dawn, Jesus heads into the temple. As is always the case around Jesus, people start gathering around Jesus. So he sits down and he begins to teach them. And in the middle of this lesson, in the middle of Jesus teaching people, in burst the Pharisees. They come crowding in, they burst in, and they got someone with them. They got this woman with them. This woman who they caught in the act of adultery. So it continues. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery." They made her stand before the group of Pharisees, the group of people gathered there when Jesus was teaching. Now, this was a woman at her absolute most vulnerable. She was caught in the middle of doing something wrong, in the middle of this sin. And then she's dragged into the place of worship, into the temple, and forced to stand up in front of a group. How would that have felt? Think about your worst moment. The worst moment in your life. That thing you said that hurt that person, that broke that relationship. That thing you did that cost you that job, that sent your life down the other path. That self-destruction that happened in your life that started that one moment that led you down that terrible path. That thing, when you think about it, you feel shame, regret, embarrassment. That thing you hope that nobody finds out about. Think about that. Now imagine, in that moment, when that happened, being dragged out of wherever you were, brought in here, and put on display right in front of everybody in the church, and have exactly what you did revealed to you. To everybody. What would that feel like? I want no part of that. The story continues. The woman had been caught in adultery, and it says, "The law of Moses commanded us to stone such a woman." Now what do you say? What do you say, Jesus? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. So they drag this woman up in front of absolutely everybody to use her. She was not a person to the Pharisees. She was a pawn in their religious battle with Jesus. They only saw her for her sin. They don't see her. What they see of her is what they can use her for. It might even be possible that they specifically targeted this woman because they knew what she was doing. So here we find this woman. She'd made a mess in her life. She's caught in this horrible moment. She's embarrassed, shamed, used, judged, threatened. She's as vulnerable as perhaps she's ever been and ever will be. She's all alone, surrounded by a hostile crowd, which happens to also include the Son of God, with her sin on full display. Have you ever felt like your life is a mess? Have you ever felt ashamed? Have you ever felt abandoned, judged, used? In those moments, what would it feel like to have to stand before God? What emotion does that make you feel? What comes to your mind? The woman finds herself completely publicly exposed, standing before Jesus. All she has known is pain, failure, and judgment. What is Jesus going to do? What is he going to do? I mean, the Pharisees are right by the letter of the law. The law says stoning. How is Jesus going to respond to her? What follows is one of the more dramatic scenes in the New Testament. Jesus bent down and started writing on the ground with his finger. He starts writing on the ground. What is he writing? We have no idea. But he starts writing on the ground, and they just keep harassing. They keep questioning him. What are you going to say, Jesus? What are you going to say? Finally, when they kept questioning him, what are you going to do? What are you going to say about her? He straightens up, and he says to them, "Let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." In the midst of this scene, Jesus finds the right answer. He says, look, okay, all right, you want law? Fine. You want judgment? Fine. You want execution? Fine. Here's how we're going to do it. First one of you who hasn't sinned, you get to throw the first stone at her. First one of you who hasn't lied, go ahead, throw a stone. First one of you who has never lusted, throw a stone. Those of you who haven't gossiped, complained, have never been jealous, have never been gluttonous. Wait a second, Jesus, are those actual sins? Are those real sins? Like, does that count? Yeah, that counts. You get to throw the first stone. Silence. Silence. Nobody says anything. Nobody does anything. Then Jesus gets back down, starts writing back down on the ground. And as he continues writing, one by one, every one of the accusers walks away, disappears, heads out in some other direction, leaves. One by one, the whole crowd starts moving away until all that's left is Jesus and this woman. That's it. Jesus is there with this woman. Everyone else has walked away. So there he is, right there with her. Now, I'm sure in this moment, she was still waiting for the judgment to come on her. That's all she'd known. That's all she'd experienced. She's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. What's going to happen to me now? So Jesus straightens up and he looks at her and he says to her, "Where are they? Where are they? Has no one condemned you? She looks at him and says, no one, sir. And he says, neither do I condemn you. Go and leave your life of sin. Now, if there was anyone who was qualified to judge this woman, it was Jesus, the sinless Son of God, Jesus. He was the one who was qualified to judge her. Instead, he chooses a different path. He chooses to give her something she has never experienced before. God's gentle grace. God's gentle grace. In her worst moment, in front of God in the flesh, she received the gentle care of Jesus. She expected harshness. She expected judgment. She expected punishment. And instead, she got the exact opposite. Now, I can only imagine what was going through her mind in this moment. Did this just happen? Is this real? Is this actually happening? How is this happening? Or maybe it was something like, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. By the letter of the law, she didn't. But in her weakest moment, Jesus was gentle. In your weakest moment, in my weakest moment, Jesus is gentle. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that? Now, many of us who've even been believers and followers of Jesus for many years, struggle with this idea. Struggle with the concept that Jesus is gentle. That God is gentle in our weaknesses. Why is it so often so hard for us to see and believe that God is gentle? Well, there could be a lot of reasons. But there's three I want us to take a look at for a minute. One of the reasons we may think that Jesus isn't gentle might be because of how we grew up, the family we grew up in. Maybe you grew up in a very strict, harsh household. Maybe it was a household that lacked tremendously in love, that was heavy on rules, that every time you stepped out of line, all you received was harsh, judgmental punishment. Maybe that's your story. Maybe for some of you, you've had bad past church experiences. Let's face it, there have been way too many times that the church has not reflected Jesus when it comes to these type of things. Maybe you've experienced that. Maybe you grew up as part of that. Maybe you grew up in a church that was very legalistic, that was extremely harsh on big sins, while kind of ignoring some of the other sins. Maybe you grew up never feeling like it was okay to admit that you struggle, or that you sin, or that you were a failure. You had to appear like you had it all together. I know in some church settings, maybe you've seen this, where somebody who was brought up on one of the big sins had to come up in front of church and confess it in front of everybody. Not unlike the story we just read. And some of you may have even gotten a double dose of that, where you had it at home and you had it at church. Or maybe for some of you, you have a hard time believing because of life circumstances. Life has been beating you down. Maybe you've made so many mistakes that you feel like a failure. Maybe you've made a mess of your life and it's just getting terrible. Or maybe there have been so many bad things that have happened to you, stuff that's out of your control. Maybe some of both. But because of all the way that life has treated you, you have a hard time believing that something like grace exists, or that God can be good. and all of these things, family, church, life, has given you the idea that God can't handle your failure, that he's harsh, judgmental, and an angry God. Maybe it could be summed up by this Jim Carrey quote from the movie Bruce Almighty. God is just a mean kid with a magnifying glass, and I'm the ant. He could fix my life in 5 minutes if he wanted to, but he'd rather burn off my feelers and watch me squirm. Maybe for some of you, that sums up how you feel about God. For some of you, there are so many reasons why you have a hard time believing that God can be gentle, that Jesus is gentle. So do you, and all of us. Jesus gives us an invitation. He gives us an invitation, and it's in Matthew chapter 11. He says to this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus is saying, come try this out. In the hardness of life, he's saying, in your failure, in your messes, in your sin, come to me. Come to me. And you will receive not condemnation. You will receive not judgment, but rest. Deep rest for your soul. Jesus is going to give you rest. He's going to give you rest because he is gentle. And that's an invitation. Try this out. Come to me. I will give you rest. I know what you're thinking. I know what impressions you have. I know what you expect to receive when you come to me. But listen to what I'm telling you. If you come to me, you're going to get rest. Now, for us to fully understand what Jesus is offering here, we have to really understand what's going on with this idea of the yoke. He mentions it a couple times. Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy. What are we talking about when we're talking about this idea of yoke? Well, it was originally something that was involved in farming. This is an example of an old yoke. It was used to help animals plow fields. Plowing was very difficult. The soil was very difficult. And it was too much for one ox to do on its own. So they would try to use teams of oxen to plow the fields. And the yoke was what they would connect the oxen with. They would hook up each one of them to a yoke. It was a lightweight wooden device designed to connect the animals, to allow them to work together and prevent injury to the animals. It helped them share the load so that it would make it easier for each one of them to plow the field. Now, what farmers would often do in those days is they would have this young, inexperienced oxen that they hadn't yet gotten to train. And what they would do is they would put that oxen in the yoke with a stronger, more experienced ox. They would yoke them together. And what this was designed to do was for the older, more experienced ox to be able to help guide and teach the younger ox what to do. When it started steering off in another direction, they would bring it back together. And while the younger ox was learning, the older ox would share the most of the weight of the work. He would take most of that on himself until the younger ox learned what to do, learned how to plow properly, and learned the value of sharing the workload. So now Jesus comes along, and here's what he's saying. He's saying, look, I'm offering to link up with you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I'm willing to link up with you, to connect to you. I'm willing to share the load with you. And I'm willing to share the vast majority of the burden of what's going on with you. so that you can find some rest. But that's not all. He's saying, I will walk alongside you so that you can learn from me. The way you're going isn't working for you. It's going to make your life harder. I want so much for you, so much more for you than constant struggle. Allow me to teach you. Allow me to show you a better way. Jesus said to the woman, neither do I condemn you. Now leave your life of sin. Jesus shouldered the burden for this woman. He was gentle. He gave her grace. He offered her a new beginning. He tells her, leave your life of sin. Leave what you're doing. I have so much more for you than where you're at and what you've been doing. He offers her a new beginning. And Jesus is giving each one of us that same offer today. He knows what you're going through. He says, I see you. I see where you're at. I'm not someone you run from. I'm someone you run to. Run to me. Allow me to take on your burden. Learn from me. I have so much more for you than what you're experiencing. Leave your sin. Leave your burdens. Let me show you a better way. So will you? Will you? Will you accept Jesus' offer? Because Jesus is gentle. And in him, we find grace and a new beginning. If we want to respond, if you want to respond today, on your connection card, there's a couple ways to respond. Maybe for you, the thing you're struggling with is you just can't get your head around the idea that Jesus would be gentle, that he wouldn't be harsh with you. Maybe for you, that's the area you need to work on. Go ahead and check that one off. Or maybe for you, you know you need a different path. You know the way you're going down isn't working. It isn't helping you. You need to accept Jesus' new beginning that he's offering for you. Check that off. We'll be praying for you. Or maybe for you, it's a little bit of both. You can check off both if you want. Jesus is gentle. And he's offering us a new beginning. Will you accept it? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today. And God, sometimes through a whole variety of reasons, God, we have an incorrect impression of you. God, help us today to understand who you are really. You are a God who is kind. You are a God who is gentle with us. And you offer grace. Grace to us when we don't deserve it. And you're asking us, come to me. Stop running away from me. I'm not the person you run away from. I'm who you run to. In the harshness of life. In the midst of the mess that sometimes we create, in the midst of our failure, we can come to you. You have offered us rest. You have offered to come alongside of us, to share our burdens, and to offer us a better path, to teach us how to work with you, to teach us how to be with you, teach us how to live a better life. God, help us this morning to accept that offer, to trust in your grace, to trust in your gentleness, and to take advantage of the new beginning that you offer us today. Help us to take advantage of that grace, God. In your name, amen.
Thanks again for listening. Any step you take towards Jesus is a step in the right direction. You can find out more about us at crbic.org. That's crbic.org.